So I guess I'm the reason that everyone's here tonight, and I'm happy to come introduce myself and talk a little bit about the work that we are doing, because I know there's a lot of questions. So I don't really have, because of the situation, I was hoping I could get a slideshow and kind of talk through things with everybody, but being that I don't have a screen and the setup out here, I'm just gonna I'll try to talk and amplify my voice so you guys can hear what I'm saying, and I'll be respectful of everybody's time. You guys can feel free to tap me and say speak me up.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for letting me come out here and talk. I know that there's been a lot of chatter in the last couple weeks, specifically here in Sidney Township and on Facebook about wind turbines and what's going on and what we're doing and why you haven't heard about it, etc. So I'm going to stay around afterwards rather than get into the big debate here tonight. I will stay around afterwards and be more than happy to talk to every last person that's got questions or concerns, or if you want to let me know how you feel about it. I'm happy to sit here and take it. There are answers to, have been doing this work for a number of years now. There's answers to all the questions. And so before I dive into that, I wanted to maybe just take a step back, introduce myself, introduce us, introduce our team and our company, and let you know a little bit about what we're actually doing, how the process works, etc. So my name is Albert Youngaward. I'm originally from Minnesota. I grew up in Minnesota. My dad's side of the family is from the central Minnesota, farm country in central Minnesota. My mom's side is from Albert Lea, farm country down in southern Minnesota, right on the Iowa border. I've kind of lived all over the country, working on a number of issues and working in rural America for the last, heck, my whole life really. But I've been working on with Apex Clean Energy for the last, say, about 4 years. In that time, I've worked in a number of states, but I've spent most of my time with Apex right here in central Michigan. And so the approach that we take to doing this work, it's really community focused. The whole project that we have designed for Montcalm County is with the community in mind. So we talk about having a community-based lease. And what that means is that anybody who owns any amount of property of any size, half acre in a house, a third of an acre in a house, up to hundreds or thousands of acres, if you own any amount of property in the targeted project footprint, you're eligible to sign a lease. We've been working in Montcalm County for the last, I want to say, heck, it's been a couple of years. COVID has made 2020, COVID and everything else, I mean 2020 seems like it's been about a decade and a half. Since June. I mean, it's just been a pretty bizarre year. It's made things difficult for us. But this is not the first time that I'm here to the township. I've talked before the township board a number of times. I've talked to the planning commission, and we've been out working with members of the community here, talking about wind leases. It's a very personable thing. It's a one-on-one sort of a conversation. These things don't happen overnight. These projects take years to develop. Like I said, we've been working in Montcalm County for upwards of 2 years now. The first.
Been working here. We were just getting word.
Well, I'm gonna.
Why is that?
Like I said, I'm gonna get to your
We've
questions.
been here for 2 years, and we're just getting word of it now.
I'm not okay.
Like
so
that
I don't
movie,
know. I don't know where everybody lives.
Comes in, silver talks all
Let's
these
keep
people.
he's talking now.
Then the movie comes out, how the company screws
You want us to have
everybody
to adjourn the
over.
meeting and that'll
These
be it?
turbines, when they
Joe,
go
let him
bad,
talk.
you're gonna bury
Joe.
them on your property.
I think you can learn if you listen.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you ought to listen first.
Well, I learned from turbines, they don't last forever, about 20 years.
Let Albert
Are you going to give him his chance to talk later? I think you ought to listen. Try to learn.
Yeah, I'm here as a guest who's trying to be as open and informative to this community as I can. And that's not going to change the next time you talk to me. My story's not going to change. I sleep pretty well at night because I don't have to sit here and make up lies and tell stories. It's what we say, we put in writing, and if I start lying to you today, or if I start lying to you 4 years ago, or the other communities that I've been working in the last 4 years, I wouldn't really have a job today, because it gets caught pretty quickly. And so, I'm going to be upfront. You might not like what I have to say, and that's okay. And I'm going to respect your position, but I am going to say that I'm here to try to answer your questions and be upfront about the work that we do. I think that I was saying that this year has obviously been pretty strange with COVID and everything else that's been going on. But we are still trying to meet in a responsible way, in a safe way with members of the community. We're not working in all of Sidney Township. There's areas of Sidney Township that we're not working in, that we're not signing ground in, that we're not planning to build anything in. Nevins Lake, for example, is one of those areas. We're not building right on the lakes, and we'll have setbacks from those lakes to try to help address some of the concerns that some people do have about visual impact, especially if you're coming in from, say, Grand Rapids to your vacation lake house or your cottage. We understand you people pay money and they want to be able to come and enjoy their vacation home, you know, without, you know, looking at something. That I've heard that. Well, we're taking that into consideration.
We all do.
We all do. And we're all. This is all a community. Again, back to this, the approach that we take for the community. That's been kind of one of Apex's. It's one of the things that sets us apart from other developers. I don't have any problem saying this. Some wind companies will come in and sign a lease. And it's a has versus have not. If you don't have a certain number of acres, they don't consider you in the project. Or if you don't have a wind turbine on your property at the end of the day, it's a lot easier for certain companies, based on the way that the lease structure is set up, to drop you from the project if, for whatever reason, you don't have a wind turbine, but maybe your neighbor does. But you might not be needed for that project, and so it's easier at the end of the day for other companies, based on their lease structure, the legally binding contractual agreement between us, the company, and you, the landowner. It's easier to drop you from the project at the end of the day because maybe for whichever reason you didn't get a wind turbine and you're not a part of the project. Not necessary. They cut you, they save money. That creates has versus have-nots. The structure that we have is very different. Again, anybody who has any amount of property in the project footprint, which does not include all of Sidney Township, but does include a portion of Sidney Township, anybody who's got any amount of property is eligible to sign a lease. You sign the exact same lease, the exact same legally binding document as any other person. We don't have one-off agreements with people. There's language in the lease that says if I change the lease terms for anyone in this room, I've got to change the terms for everybody. So if you hold out, or if you just have more property, or you're a better negotiator, or you know, whatever else it might be, you don't get better terms. The terms are the same for everybody. So that forces us to, I think, come out and approach this in a more open-minded way that allows us to treat folks fairly. We don't have eminent domain rights. I can't come to you, I can't twist your arm and force you to sign a lease. That's not how this works. We're a private company, we're not the utility, so we don't have eminent domain rights where we can come and do something on your property if you don't sign a lease. We can't. So if you don't sign a lease, that is totally your right. And everybody's eligible to make that decision for themselves. That also requires us to try to come forward with a lease that we think is a good opportunity for people. And so when I think about these projects, opportunity is the word that comes to mind, because everybody's got a different position. The opportunity for the township or the local school system, taxing jurisdictions in Montcalm County may be one thing, and your neighbor may see things differently than you, but maybe it's an opportunity to try to get through some tough commodity prices. It's no surprise this is an egg-based community. Commodity prices aren't great. They haven't been great. Things have been kind of tough. Maybe it's an opportunity to think about retirement. Maybe it's an opportunity to think about keeping the farm in the family and passing it along to the grandkids or to the children to continue running the family farm. I can't tell you what it is for you. Maybe it's not even of any interest. You can say, hey man, buzz off, get out of here. I'm not going to sign a lease. That is your opportunity. That's your right to say that as well. But it comes down to a land rights issue a lot of times. In a lot of communities, it's a conversation that that sometimes unfortunately has to be had. It's a land rights. I can't tell my neighbor necessarily what to do or what not to do. I mean, I can tell them how I feel, but I'm not making the decisions or paying the taxes or putting kids through college or whatever else it might be. I'm not making those decisions for my neighbor. That's not my right. You know, my right on my property exists. We should all exercise it the way we think is most appropriate for us and our family or particular situation. But back to the wind lease and back to the way that we structured this whole project. Again, we can't force anybody to do anything that they don't want. When it comes to signing leases, it's a one-on-one conversation. Maybe we can get lucky and get the whole family together, but it's usually one-on-one. There's a small team of us, myself. We've got the gentleman standing in the back here, and I don't want to call him out, but this is Dan Paris. He's a Montcalm County resident. Many of you may know him. Maybe you've seen him around. He's out of Lakeview. He's been a big ally from my standpoint to help me understand the specific needs, concerns, issues, family township dynamics in Montcalm County. Without some input from the community locally, I can't come out and tell you what this project should look like. One of the things that makes Montcalm County as a whole different from some other townships, some other counties in Michigan, in central Michigan, up in the UP, over in the Thumb. Well, maybe not the Thumb, because, well, the pivot system. We've got a sandy soil out here. We've got, you know, the potato community here is big. It's important. It's a huge part of this county. It's a huge part of this community. We respect that. We know that if you've got a pivot irrigation system, the last thing you probably want to do is for someone like me to come around and say, hey, I'm going to stick a wind turbine right here in the middle of your field. No one's going to sign that lease. I would have known it. I get that. So we've put some restrictions upon ourselves. Now keep in mind, we're in the business of, technically we're in the business of putting up wind turbines. But we've put some restrictions in writing, guaranteed in writing in our lease, in that legally binding document, that says we don't have the right, even if you sign a lease, whoever signs a lease, we don't have a right to come and disrupt your pivot system without written permission from you, the landowner, to do so. So we can't. Now, in order to get written permission from a landowner to disrupt your pivot system, which we know those things cost a lot of money, in order to get your permission to do that, if we even propose the idea, well, we're going to have to be willing to pay to redesign that pivot system. Maybe we've got to relocate it, maybe we've got to put on a swing arm, whatever else it might be, we've got to be willing to pay for that. So that's in writing. That's a binding agreement that we're putting out there for landowners. There's some other restrictions that we've put upon ourselves to give the landowner the ultimate say at the end of the day, whether a turbine goes on their property or whether they don't, if and when they sign a lease. So anyone who's signed a lease, if we're going to propose to put a turbine on your property, we can't. We can't without your permission. And so, I can tell you that's not a very common thing. I would challenge people to find another company that's in the business of putting up wind turbines who took all the authority out of their own hands to put out the wind turbines and gave it to the private landowner. That's another thing that's going to force us that could break our project. It could. We could spend millions of private dollars up front over the next couple of years and not have a project at the end of the day if we cannot find a way to work in good faith with the landowners. That means we've got to work in good faith with the community and anybody who's a leaseholder in our project. We've got to enter into this contract in good faith. And so that's going to force us to go the extra mile, I think, to try to be upfront again and be open with things. I mentioned the eminent domain. We don't have those rights. We cannot touch your property, anybody's property, if you don't have a wind lease. So there's going to be nothing proposed on your property if there's no lease in agreement. And so that's a little bit about who we are and what I think differentiates ourselves from some other wind developers. If you can find a different contract, a different agreement, I know there's been several other wind companies that have looked in this area, but they're not here today. And I don't know that they were necessarily willing to make some of those concessions. The lease is based on participation, so there's an acreage payment. So it's intended to be as fair and spread out in terms of spreading the value to the greatest number of people possible. So there's an acreage payment. You have an acre and a house, you're eligible to sign a lease. We'll pay you the same acreage payment as the guy that's got a couple hundred acres per acre, every year, annual payment, no questions asked if you're in the final project footprint. We don't know at the start of this who's going to sign a lease and who won't. We don't have a clue. I don't have a clue where I can put turbines. But we're hoping to figure that out as we go over the next couple of years working on this project and working with the community. So there is a per acre payment that everybody's guaranteed if you're in the final project footprint. Now, I haven't been able to get into the Facebook page, but I have been made aware that there's concern about people getting paid. And the way that works, what's going on, and what I think what that is all about, I feel it's fair to address it, is anybody who has signed a wind lease with us so far to date, everybody, there's a development period. And so for the first 6 years of this project, we've got 6 years to try to develop the lease. If you sign a wind lease, just like an oil and gas lease, you get a small couple bucks an acre payment up front. Everybody, no questions asked, it's the same thing. That allows us to say, okay, in good faith, we're considering you as a part of this project, but we're going to go out and keep working. I can't promise you're going to be in the project at the end of the day, or that you're going to have a turbine. No guarantee of any kind, other than we're going to go out and try to work with the rest of the community to sign these leases. So it's a couple dollars an acre payment per acre. Again, whether you've got one acre or you got a couple hundred acres, everybody who's signed the lease so far has been treated the exact same way. So there is no favorable treatment from that standpoint. Anybody who would like to talk to us afterwards, Dan or I, Mel, who's on my team also somewhere, we'd love to talk to you guys afterwards. Oh, there you are. So this is Mel Christensen. I didn't see you earlier, Mel, sorry, I forgot where you're sitting. Mel is working with us. She had spent a number of years working with the community college here at MCC. She's not new to this community. She's also trying to help us understand how do we be more responsive to concerns, questions, community engagement, etc. This is not something that we're going to shy away from. We're happy to come talk to anybody, but I can't do it all on my own. Dan can't do it all on his own, so we've got Mel. We're trying to find a way to build the team so we can have more conversations with more people, bottom line. And we'll continue this work for the next couple of years. I can't tell you today where a turbine goes or where it can't go. There's a lot of, in addition to township ordinances and rules at the township level, we also have the state. I'm on conversations or in conversations with the state DNR, with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services about the eagles. We know there's eagles here, and we can't disrupt them. Some of you guys may have seen a little red car. I don't even know who the guy is. I think his name is Jeff, but he drives a little red car. He's a consultant with us. We're going to have over the next couple of years at least 2, if not more, years of environmental studies. So we're looking at all the known eagles nests. And we got a guy driving around a little red car. He's a birder. He goes out and he looks with his binoculars and he sits there for hours at a time counting the number of birds. What type of bird? Is that a raptor? That's an eagle? That's, I don't know, that looks like a finch. There's a songbird. I don't know. But he's got to go out there and document all the types of birds that he sees. We've got to keep accurate records of this. We've got to share it with the state DNR. We've got to share it with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the federal agencies. They tell us at the end of the day, based on the data that we provide to them, if it's not sufficient, hey, you got to go do more work. In the spring, we'll start doing some bat studies. We're going to have to look at known bat habitat. We'll have to see what types of bats are out here. There's an endangered, or a listed, it's not endangered, but there's a butterfly. It's a blue something butterfly. I don't know, I'm not the environmentalist, but there's a butterfly out here that we've got to identify the known butterfly habitat. There's a particular type of flower that this butterfly lives on, and if we identify that flower in the area, we've got additional setbacks, and they could be a couple miles from that known flower habitat. And so, same thing with eagle's nest. If there's an eagle's nest in Isabella County, we had 2 eagle's nests in the project area. We had a setback 1.6 mile radius from all directions from that eagle's nest. So a lot of signed ground, a lot of landowners who are out there who are excited about the project. Guess what? You know, we signed your property, but there's an eagle's nest here. We can't do anything on your property. You know, we kept them in the property at the end of the day, or in the project, so they're going to continue to get paid throughout the life of the project, but they certainly don't have wind turbines. Well, it wasn't their choice, wasn't necessarily our choice. That was the federal agencies tell us what we can and cannot do. So that process is going to continue. We've got the FAA, so the federal airline folks. They tell us, you know, how tall towers can go, where they can go, where they can't go. you know, we can't obstruct flight paths. We can't obstruct radar systems. So we're going through those studies, working with the federal agencies also to make sure that we don't obstruct radar systems. While we're talking about being up in the sky, there's information highways up there. So we all have cell phones, and we cannot interrupt cell phone beam paths or communication, the communication highways that exist. We can't see them, but up above us there's paths that go from all these cell towers throughout the area. We can't disrupt that. We've got to do those studies. That puts additional restrictions on us. There's military flight training routes. Well, those things sometimes change. Well, we're not here to disrupt the military flight path, so of course we can't interfere with that. So we're doing all of these studies, and at the end of the day, we don't know, again, until we get further along through this process and have a lot more of these types of conversations one-on-one, hopefully with many of you here, about what this means and what this doesn't mean. So I don't want people to leave here tonight thinking that, hey, guess what, in a month's time we're going to start knocking on the doors and submitting an application to build a wind farm here. That's not going to happen. We're a couple years out. But it takes a lot of work. These projects could take 5 years to develop. We've been at it for 2, but it's going to take a couple more. In the meantime, we're going to continue to be open. And if you sign a wind lease, you guarantee that there's at least a minimum acreage payment coming in every year. If the project fails, you know, we tried. But that's the burden that we shoulder. I will say, you know, Apex is a privately held company. We're based out of Charlottesville, Virginia. We're American owned. It was a startup in 2009 from our CEO, who used to be in the wind business. I think he did pretty well. He built a couple wind farms. He got bought out by a bigger company, and then he had a non-compete clause, so he had to get out of the business for a while. And then in 2008, 2009, the economy tanked. Right about the time that he was getting out of a non-compete. So he invested in communities. He bought some projects in early stage development, and we built them. They're successful projects in Illinois, in Texas, in Oklahoma, and in Kansas that we've been a part of. We work in 26 different states across the country. We manage some wind farms also in Canada. Our CEO is a United States veteran, retired from the Air Force. Well, I shouldn't say retired, but served in the Air Force before leaving the service and getting into the private world. Our COO is from the Army. We've got a ton of guys who operate our operations center and manage our wind parks in Canada, in Texas, in other parts of the upper Midwest. A lot of these guys are old Marines, brought out of the service, working in the wind industry. Again, opportunities for them and their families, but we're pretty committed to this whole idea of community. We're very committed to our veterans. That's something that you know, I'm proud of, but I think it speaks to the character of who we are and who's leading our company. So again, we're working in 26 different states. We have built successful projects across multiple states. We've built some projects. We built a wind farm for Fort Hood, for the DOD down in Texas. So we have a wind farm that was built by Apex Clean Energy that is helping power and provide backup power for Fort Hood, a United States military base. We also have a solar field built on the base, in the fence on Fort Hood, helping produce power for the United States military. So we're not just a fly-by-night organization who comes in and tries to pull the wool over, you know, communities' eyes. You know, so that's a little bit about who we are. Again, in the interest of time, I don't want to go too deep into the weeds on picking apart studies and all this stuff, but I do know that some of the stuff that I've seen, at least on the Facebook, or that people have sent me, or that I've been asked about, frankly, just isn't very accurate. It's not true. Some of it's misleading. Some of it could be old information, but a couple examples that I know are of key interest to a lot of people. Health. Well, what about my property taxes? What about my property value? What's going to happen to my community if there's a wind farm in my community? The health piece, I think, is a key one. Let's start with that. We're not in the business of destroying communities. We wouldn't still be doing this work all over the country if we had a history of destroying communities after we came in and built the project. That wouldn't make any sense. Gratiot County wouldn't have what Gratiot County has in terms of, they built the first project back, started operations in 2012. Well, okay, that's one. neighboring communities realized what it was, saw it for themselves, either probably worked around some of those turbines that are out there in the field, they probably farmed some of those fields, they went out and talked to their neighbors, because, I mean, heck, you guys probably have relationships over there, or at least know members from the community. Maybe you're selling your beans to the new facility that's out there. One project happened in Gratiot County, then the next project happened because it was done the right way, because people didn't get sick, because property values didn't plummet, because the community was not destroyed. And all of a sudden, by the end of this year, we're going to have 6 different projects in Gratiot County. 6 of them. All independent projects. Now, they might look the same, but there's 6 different projects in Gratiot County, which would not have happened if the first one, or the second one, or heck, the fourth one destroyed the community. If property values plummeted in Gratiot County, nobody would be signing up for this. It would have been run out of town. The same thing we anticipate will happen here. There have been multiple studies on this. On the health study, some of the links that I did see, I was able to get some links that were shared on the Facebook page. I get it. We're focused on the community. You want to help your neighbors. You want to stand up for your neighbors. I pulled up some of the health study links. On the first page of some of these links, they say wind turbines do not result in adverse impacts to human health. Or, like, I've got the actual study, so I can quote it. It does say there are examples of annoyance, and maybe annoyance, has an impact on you, and maybe because you're annoyed by the fact that there's a turbine out there, and you look at it, and you really don't like this thing. You think this thing represents something that I despise. Well, I can see how you get annoyed. But that's, again, back why it's important for us to do our job, to try to talk with the community about what this is and what this isn't. There are no known health effects, adverse health effects to humans, to livestock, to deer, to the natural environment, the animals that I don't know, squirrels, you name it. There's no known adverse health impacts that have been documented in any sort of a credible way that are related to wind turbines. Operating wind turbines, non-operating wind turbines. The sound is a whooshing noise. They're not silent machines. I'm not going to tell you that they're silent. Don't let anyone tell you that they're silent, but they're not loud, and they're not negatively impacting your health. Infrasound is created by most things. The cars that are driving down the road right now, the tires just spinning down the road, generates infrasound. Infrasound is technically a non-audible sound that, it's measured in, there's infrasound right there taking place as that car drives by. It's measured in, sound pressure. You get it if you're on an airplane, you get it if you're driving down the road, especially if you're driving down the road with the one window kind of cracked just a little bit, and it starts, that's a massive amount of infrasound. That's what it is. Now, it's irritating. It's never made anybody sick, but it's also like magnitudes more infrasound when you're just driving down the road with that window cracked. That's a massive amount of infrasound compared to what you might actually experience from a wind turbine that's positioned out in the middle of a field. So I mentioned some of the restrictions we imposed upon ourselves. Our intention is to put turbines out in fields of signed property, in the middle of the field, because we can't interfere with those pivot systems unless we're paying for it. There's a strong likelihood that we're going to be putting these turbines likely as far away from the houses as possible, because we're going to be forced to. So that's all part of the stuff that we've got to work out. But from a health standpoint, there are documented cases of annoyance. Misbehaved children at the grocery store can be annoying, but they don't make you sick. And it's maybe I should try to make a joke out of this. But turbines don't have examples of causing cancer or heart palpitations, or I've heard of hardening of the arteries somehow. There's a lot of stuff that's been alleged, but it's not actually proven to be true. Property values is a good one, and I think we look at Gratiot County again. We're in the process of conducting a study, so we can try to be upfront and say, hey, here's a study of property values in the state of Michigan. There's actual turbines in the state of Michigan, up in the thumb, over in Gratiot County. We're going to have some examples from Isabella County now, because we're in the process of completing a construction project out in Isabella County. That's got over 600 signed families in the project. Over 50,000 acres. It's about 56, a little more than 56,000 acres signed up into that project. It's the largest one in the state. We couldn't have done it if we're destroying the community and people ran us out of town. Would it be possible?